Festival so far. I'm Marianne Mohenraj. I'm festival director. I think I've met most of you at this point, but there are a few faces I don't know. We are at our guest of honor reading, and I'm very delighted to introduce Manil Suri. We're going to, I think, do a more formal introduction tomorrow when he gives his guest of honor talk. Tonight I'll just say that I met Manil this summer when we were both up for Bisexual Book Awards, Best Bisexual Book Awards. He won, I did not. So we were even different categories.
Different
categories, not head to head, but nonetheless. It was a terrific night in New York, and I heard him read and I heard him talk, and it was just awesome. And then I was like, "Can you please be our guest of honor?" And he was like, "Well, please." Anyway, Manil is the author of 3 books and has been award-winning and award-nominated, and you'll hear it all more professionally tomorrow. So I'm just going to let you talk now. So thank you everyone.
Okay. Well, thank you. I actually have a PowerPoint to go along with this. We were checking the sound to make sure it's not too loud. It might still be too loud. There are a few explosions, so brace yourself. I'll warn you if I remember. But I'm going to actually start with a little bit from the right at the beginning of the book instead of actually having to introduce it. So let me just start by reading out just a very short piece. 4 days before the bomb that is supposed to obliterate and kill us all, I stand in the ruins of Crawford Market, haggling with the lone remaining fruit seller over the price of the pomegranate in my hand. Is 500 rupees not an outrageous price already? Why won't you sell it to me for 500? Look at what's happening around you, Mem Sahib. Do you think the orchards are overflowing with pomegranates? Do you think the lorries are driving into Mumbai every day and filling the markets with fruit? I'm only asking for 1,000 because it's you, Mem Sahib, but even 3 times that wouldn't be too much for this last piece, which really was the best one in the pile to begin with. I look at the sign for Crawford Market behind me, still smoldering from last night's air raid, or has it simply been another terrorist bomb? All around our shops gutted in the fire. Remains of baskets lie scattered on the ground. Pieces of fruit too charred for the scavengers to steal rest at my feet. I notice a tangerine that still has its characteristic knob at the top. It has been roasted to a black, perfectly hulled crisp. Down the corridor, only one other stall stands intact, a spice merchant who has also somehow escaped the attack. He's using a stick to try and rouse the carcass of a dog that has died in front of his store. Fruitwala has a point. Supply and demand, he has me where he wants. This much I know, I must have the pomegranate before I begin my quest. Some instinct deep inside insists it's my best shot. But what's tied into the folds of the silk dupatta around my neck is a few hundred less than the fruitwala wants. Bhaiya, listen, I try once more. They're dropping the atom bomb next week. Atom bomb, you understand? Not some firecracker that's demolished the market around you. On Bombay, Mumbai, whatever you call it, the city's going to be finished. What would you do even if you did manage to squeeze out the extra money from someone? Take it to heaven with you? And what if nobody else came to your store? Most of the city has fled, Is this what you want to happen to your fruit? I nudge the tangerine with my foot and it crumbles into ash. But the fruitwala is adamant. He won't sell for less. It's all up to Devi Ma's grace, he says. She's the city's patron goddess after all. Now that she's appeared in our midst, perhaps she'll save us, who knows? But even if she doesn't, even if she only lets me hold the money for 10 minutes, at least I'll have that much for her. At least I'll have it for that much time. At least I'll die with an offering for her in my hand. Suddenly the futility of what I'm trying to do overwhelms me. How ridiculous to put such hopes in a pomegranate. Ever since I started my vigil for Karun 18 days ago, I've kept close to my building complex, sheltered from the mayhem, trying not to obsess over where he might be now or why he left. With the internet dying out, together with phones, radio, and television, even electricity, my only news about the outside has been through tidbits from our lone remaining watchman. Somewhere towards Metro, a gun fires 3 times. Looters probably executed by the police, or perhaps by vigilantes, the police force, according to our watchman, having also fled. I wonder what would happen if I bolted, wrapped the pomegranate in my dupatta and left over the rubble that used to be the entrance. Would the fruitwala run after me? Would the vigilantes fire at me as well? Surely their code of conduct must frown upon the gunning down of women. So anyway, that's the beginning, and that's Sarita that you hear. And she's talking about Karun, who's her husband of about 2 years, and he has just suddenly vanished. It's in the middle of this war that's going on where Pakistan has threatened, they've gotten into a conflict, and Pakistan has threatened to use its nuclear option because India has more conventional forces. And so that's where the City of Devi starts. And as I said, PowerPoint, I've been playing around with that. So here is my little, that's Sarita. Okay, so special effect, come on. Okay, there we go. So that of course was the hardcover. So here's the city, and this is the city of Mumbai. I grew up there actually. And Sarita is actually, she's way down in South Mumbai, in Kolaba, in that area. And she's actually heard from her husband, who is up somewhere in Bandra. That's the last she heard from him. And that's her husband Karun. And you might recognize some of these pictures. Does anyone recognize that? Who is it? No. That's actually an artist thing, but this guy.
Is it Deepak?
Yes. He's from Slumdog Millionaire.
Okay.
So, yeah, Dev Patel. So Sarita has to negotiate the city, which is basically a maze. She's looking for her husband. She doesn't know where he is, and when I was writing this book, I said, okay, like that first scene with the pomegranate, you've already seen there are all these symbols in the book, so that you already saw this pomegranate, and this pomegranate was a lot of fun, because she keeps losing it and then gaining it. But then at the end, I said, my God, what am I going to do with this pomegranate? What's the significance? And so it took me a long time to figure it out, and it was some other way that I resolved it. But anyway, so keep your eye on the pomegranate. It's going to be quite useful because Sarita hasn't been. Our marriage with Karun has had its ups and downs, and the pomegranate actually does tell her something about it. But then this thing, everyone here has had Marmite?
Yes.
Anyone who hasn't had Marmite? Okay, so those of you who haven't, it's the world's nastiest substance. It is, it's pretty awful, but the Brits love it. And so when I was growing up, I was given Marmite. Everyone spreads it on toast for some reason, and it's this black kind of, really nasty. It's yeast extract. So anyway, there's Marmite in the book, so that's a warning for everyone that if you're very allergic to it, don't get close to it. But anyway, that's another key ingredient, Marmite. And what else? Let's see. That was the big special effect. Did you catch that? That was the Super Devi. So it kind of appears, and I'm going to read you a little section about Super Devi. Super Devi, released that summer, deluging even non-movie people like us with its hype. The most expensive Indian film ever made, thanks to the backing of both Hollywood and the Indian mafia. Lata Mangeshkar teams up for her techno comeback with Lady Gaga, who my sister Uma said was a famous pop star. Their title duet rockets to the top of charts worldwide. And up in the sky, a bird, a jet, no, Super Devi herself, zooming overhead behind a prop plane as we sat and tried to ignore her on the beach at Chopati. Supposedly, the script borrowed extensively from Slumdog Millionaire and Superman, films which neither of us had seen, in telling the story of a young girl from the Mumbai slums with the power to assume different avatars of Devi to fight crime. Uma kept herding us to McDonald's, which was giving away all 9 incarnations from the movie as collectible action figures throughout India and parts of England and New Jersey. Free with food purchases, vegetarian only so as not to upset Hindu sentiments. She collected 8 of the figures, turning off the light at home to show us how they glowed in the dark, just like Super Devi. Despite foisting dozens of makalu tikki sandwiches on us, she never managed to acquire the elusive Kali incarnation, toting her AK-47 from the final battle scene. The movie managed to surpass even the most optimistic projections. I read breathless reports in magazines of kids dragging their families to see it 3 and 4 and even 10 times. Of the urban youth of India finding spiritual enlightenment in Super Devi's incarnation as call center worker to fight telefraud. Of desis in New York and London and Sydney bringing such gaggles of white friends to screenings that the film quickly spilled over to mainstream international release. A Zee TV program documented how Super Devi wielded its greatest power over rural India, whose citizens experienced it not as movie but as religious odyssey, calling the heroine Upar Devi, which translated to Upper Devi in several Indian languages. The reporter followed scores of villagers making pilgrimages from miles around to get the Super Devi's blessing at a small theater in Ambala, where both fire exits had been converted into Devi shrines for patrons to leave flowers, coconut, and monetary offerings. Perhaps the most definitive evidence of the film's popularity appeared in the calendar art sold on city streets. All the goddesses, from Lakshmi to Saraswati to Parvati, bore striking resemblance to Super Devi's child heroine, Baby Rinki. So that's Super Devi, and this of course, there was a movie called Jai Santoshima a long time ago, and so that was one of the influences for Super Devi. But also, when the Ramayana was shown on TV in India, people would just worship the screen and all that, and then that actually had a political fallout in the sense that that's when the BJP first came to power, right after that. So things where politics and religion are often hand in hand in India. So what happens with Super Devi in India in the book is that in the villages, even it's a big hit, but in the villages, more extremist elements are using this film to tell people that, okay, the Super Devi wants you to rid the country of all minorities. And that's what starts the kind of conflict between religious groups, and that's what actually ends in full-scale confrontation. So anyway, that's one of the key ingredients. So that's why Sarita finds herself in Mumbai. The city has been divided into Hindu and Muslim areas, and she has to kind of negotiate this and try to find courage. So that's where we are. Okay, so let's look at what other ingredients there are. So that's Shamu the elephant. And the reason he's there is because I was told that every Indian novel has to have an elephant. And this is my third novel, and I was remiss for the other two. I didn't have any elephants. So I had to put one in this. And this was fun because there's this whole thing about exoticism in South Asian literature, and there are all these charges and countercharges of people being too exotic. So I thought I'd play with that a little. People complain of exoticism, so let's give them exoticism. Let's give them an elephant and really, take it over the top. So that was the idea behind Shamu. But he also plays a little bit of a role in that. And then there is. Okay, so everyone recognizes him.
Oh, yeah.
So this is my character Jazz, and we won't say who it is, and he's too old now to play it, so we have to get someone better. But he's kind of he's a little old, so sorry, but so Jazz is this. Oh, what happened? How did that happen?
I like what you said about him.
I know. He's managed to. I don't even know where we ended up, so I might have to go back and change that because I don't know how that happened. But let me read you a little section about Jazz. So Jazz is, as I said, I don't know what's happening. Maybe I'm doing this. Oh yeah, I think it's this thing. Oops. I don't know how that happened. I'll fix it. But let me read you a little bit about Jazz. So Jazz, as I said, is this. He's actually grown up all over the world. What his history is that his parents are Muslim scholars, and they've come up with a new theory of Islam. and this has been a big success. So they've been invited from university to university, and he's been taken from city to city. And so he's been really screwed up. And this is after his 15th birthday. What happens is he finally, his parents don't get it. So he finally, what he does on his birthday is he takes a pin and he puts it through his tongue and then blows out blood on his birthday cake. And so that's what gets his parents' attention. So I'm going to read you the section after that, so you don't have to worry about the blood. It's just a slight reference. That finally got their attention. Their solution was to move once more, to Mother India this time, which would unscramble my identity, fill my heart with pride in who I was, where I came from. That's how the young and still impressionable Jazz found himself sitting in the green-walled annex to the Baikula Mosque in Bombay, fitted with a skull cap and equipped with a Quran. Each evening as the adults prayed upstairs, I stared at the paint peeling off the benches, trying to tune out the hadiths being explained by the Imam. Could I escape again by piercing some other body part? Fortunately, my cousin Rahim, who attended the same class, had alternative plans for my edification. My parents, ever pressed for time, arranged for me to spend the evenings at his home afterwards. At 16, Rahim not only exceeded me in age, but also in girth. I experienced his weight firsthand, each time he sat on me at the end of our wrestling bouts. He insisted we strip down to our underwear like sumo wrestlers, his sweat marking my body, smelling of whatever spice lingered most dominantly from lunch. Rahim's mother had died a decade ago, and his father worked late, so we didn't have to worry about anyone supervising us. Soon we were undressing completely and wrestling in the buff. I'm not sure if my technique improved or if Rahim simply let me, but I started ending up on top more often than not. My thighs straddling his hips, my seat pressed into his crotch. Even though I left his hands free, he never pushed me off. One evening, I had the bright idea of slapping him in the face with my penis as we horsed around. He looked at me strangely, then leaned forward and took me in his mouth. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, survivors of the coming October 19th Holocaust or future alien voyagers, this is where my journey takes its most dramatic turn. The before and after, the BC and the CE, the divine revelation that swept away all my baggage from the past. Suddenly I didn't feel hopeless. Suddenly I found myself in control. Suddenly the answers to all my questions popped and burst like fireworks. My identity flashed on, my confidence powered up, the path to my fulfillment in life blazed in the sun. Over the next few weeks, Rahim and I poked and probed and plumbed. We matched appendages to orifices in every combination that sprang to our fevered minds. Dispensing with the wrestling, we dove directly each evening into racking up the notches on the bedpost, not to mention the sofa, the dining table, the kitchen stool, even the telephone stand before it broke. The arduousness of some of our experiments eased appreciably when we discovered the lubrication properties of pantry ingredients. Jam was too sticky. Butter worked better than mayonnaise. But nothing rivaled the glissance of pure ghee. It's okay, you can laugh. My parents couldn't stop beaming. How eagerly I trotted off to class every evening. How well their mosque experiments seemed to be working. They even published a paper on this. Therapeutic self-affirmative effects of religious instruction on troubled youth. The fact that I'd begun paying attention to my physique was an added bonus. Healthy mind, healthy body, just like the Quran says, my father remarked. Each morning he saw me performing calisthenics. In reality, roles had begun to emerge in my after-curricular activity. Clearly, I was the boinker, Rahim the eternal boinky. If I wanted to fit my emerging self-image, it behooved me to start pumping up. So that was the Rahim section, and I should just tell you that while the book came out in Calcutta, that was the first reading I gave was in Calcutta last year, and let me just play with this while I do that. And they told me, whatever you do, don't, let's see, is this the one? No, that's not the one, sorry. Let me just fix this. Let's see if this one. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, so they told me, whatever you do, don't read out any of the jazz scenes, especially not the kind of sex scenes, So naturally, that's exactly what I did. Actually in the beginning, like 2 people walked out, and then 1 more person walked out. But then everything else was good, and they stayed, they laughed and all. And the city didn't faint, nothing happened, everything went on as normal. So I was quite disappointed. I was okay, 3 people walked out, but that's not enough. I think Indians are just not getting scandalized anymore. It's impossible to do anything. So anyway, continuing with the story, as you've seen, Jazz is, he looks at the city very differently. He's grown up now, and he's always looking for action in Bombay. And what happens is that he also has lost his lover, and so he joins up with Sarita to look together for their lovers. And so all these ingredients were in place, and this was like, I don't even remember what year, but they were all kind of, very tantalizing. And so all I had to do was join all these ingredients together and come up with this perfect book. And they were like snakes, and they would keep going back and forth, and I just couldn't put them together. And the weeks went by, the months went by, the years went by. And then finally I said, wait a minute, I'm also a mathematician, so why am I not looking at this task very, very logically, very mathematically? So what I said is, I'm going to actually start writing down all these plot points. So these are my actual notes, Okay, Sarita does this is the possibility, then Jazz can do these 3 things, then Karun can do this. And I started making these outcomes, like these charts. You've seen these decision trees, right? Like black moves, and then, for chess moves, then white can do this. So you go through these. And I started checking what I can do to finish this book. And what happened is that all of these things, no matter where I went with the story, was either too trite or something I'd seen before, or it didn't make sense. And so I kept going through all of these, and nothing worked. And so what I realized was that I had mathematically proved that the novel could not be written. So that was really a big relief. I'd done my work as a writer, as a novelist, and as a mathematician. And so what I did was I actually sent, this is an actual thing that I sent my agent. I said, okay, even though I've been working on this for 5 years, it's going to take, I have to start all over again. And now my agent is not a mathematician. She did not appreciate my mathematical proof. And she said, just give it to me, whatever you've got. And so that's when I started thinking, okay, maybe I can, let me just clean this up and send it to her. And I know I'd actually started another book by now. So it can't be done, but at least, let me clean it up. So as I was cleaning it up, something finally came about. And what happened was that I had these 3 characters, Jazz, Sarita, and Karun. And I don't know if you can see all these wonderful special effects. There were some fractals in there too. So I had these 3 characters, and Karun, Jazz, and Sarita. And what I've been doing, as Marianne said, I've been actually writing this trilogy for several years about the Trinity in Hinduism. And of course, the Trinity is usually Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma. But Devi is really the one who is worshipped more than Brahma. And I've actually found some cases where Devi is the 3rd person in this Trinity. So it turned out that these characters actually matched some of the attributes of these people. Like Shiva is supposed to be very he withdraws from the world. And that was pretty much what Karun does, and that's his character in the book. Jazz, Vishnu is full of energy, very jazz-like. And Devi, of course, is the mother figure, very Sarita-like. Once I saw this, then I realized that there were other trinities or threesomes, triples in the book. Like India, China, and Pakistan form a real triangle in the book. So that was another very significant thing that started emerging. And then there were other things too. For example, Karun is a physicist, and if you look into, he's working on quantum physics. Everything is made out of 3 generations of quarks. So there's the number 3 again. Anyway, what happened then was, once I saw this matchup, that did two things for me. First of all, what it did was, it focused my attention, and so once you have, once you know where you're going, it's much easier to actually get to it rather than just have this tree spreading out. So I was actually able to figure out what has to happen. These three characters really have to come together very, not just metaphorically, but also physically. And the other thing that happened was, I realized that there was more depth to this book than I thought. You've been seeing all these different elements, pomegranates and marmite and so on. I thought I was writing, I don't know, some sort of blockbuster or something. But then once this came about, I realized that, okay, I need to really stop worrying about that. There is that depth inside. And that's what really let me go. So if you read the book, you'll see there's a real turning point. Okay, I know we have a few minutes for questions. So, okay. So. Any questions? Yeah. Yes.
I'm really intrigued by the mythological as well as the political and personal, the three strands that you weave together. How do you do that in the narrative?
I mean, it's always like, and I'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow, where I like to kind of match both what's happening on a grand scale and try to reflect that in what's happening in the life of these small, this more intimate story that's going on. And so I think one of the keys in all of this is to try and find, going back to that diagram, to always try and find those paths that are going to be the most provocative. It's not just because you want to make a lot of noise and all that, but that's what's going to have the most potential for fiction. So when you get all these elements like Hindus and Muslims and gay and straight and all that interacting, then you get much more potential for actually coming up with the right story. Yes?
As a Pakistani, I just want to ask, in your last slide, Pakistan sort of pointed towards jazz. So is there
there wasn't any, although that's interesting, right? But the triangles were kind of like this. But you're right, when you switch it. But no, there wasn't any, like the Vishnu and Shiva, they don't point to any of the three characters. Yes.
Did you, when this book went to India, did you face any criticism or any, from the different political factions? Because you brought so many different elements together,
Right.
of religion and of sex and things like that. So did you face any
I was surprised, but there wasn't really anything like that. I mean, there are a couple of comments more on the politics rather than anything else. And then, of course, what happened was that last year, Section 377 got put back, and so that gave me a chance. And we actually did several interviews with news media there after that. But again, there wasn't like anything that really was like, even the letters to the editor. Okay, some of them, of course, they'll say this and that, but there wasn't anything. I didn't get a single nasty email, for instance, which was quite amazing because I know someone else whose book was released about 4 years ago. What's his name? But he had a collection of short stories, and the characters were all gay. And he went for a book tour there, and so he got some personal emails. But those didn't happen. That didn't happen. So that was, which was surprising. Yeah. Yes, back there.
You think of Murakami, which
I'm sorry.
makes me think of Murakami's book.
Murakami.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any intention there?
Oh no, but he's one of my favorite authors. I just read his new book, and it's not as good as Wind Up Bird Chronicle, but that's probably one of my favorite books. Well, thank you. That's a high compliment. Thank you.
Well, no, that's how I haven't read your book.
When is the movie coming out?
Reminds me of that.
Well, do you want to back it?
Anyway,
It does remind me, I don't know if anyone has seen Amir Khan's Toby Cut, that film kind of has these vignettes of 3 or 4 people, different parts of Bombay intersecting together. So you see that kind of a narrative structure in films, and were you inspired by films that had that?
Not in that way, but I do find that for this book especially, since it has such a cinematic feel, I was really trying to imagine each scene as a film scene. So, and then write it down, like how I was watching So not as cut and dry as a script, but something to that effect. And so, I mean, there are some scenes in this where like a train goes off the tracks, and so there are explosions and things like that. But that was more. It's also a riff on Bollywood, so that's the other element that actually goes to all three books. Yes.
I just want to compliment you that presentation with the special effects is great.
Oh, more of it.
Yeah, you had this triangle, Shiva, Vishnu, Devi. Shiva and Vishnu are worshipped everywhere in India, but Devi presumably depends on the region of India.
Well, yeah, but Devi is, I'm taking the abstract sense that it's always a different incarnation of the mother goddess.
So worshipped as different goddesses.
Yes, but essentially the theory would be that it's one. And so that's why one of the big things, the City of Devi, Mumbai means mother and I means mother too in Marathi. And so Mumbai Devi is the patron goddess, so that's where the title comes in. When I was first writing this, I said, is it going to be a Brahma book or a Devi book? And that was one of the reasons it's a Devi book. Yes, back there.
You made a reference to Jess Fukushima film
Right.
that came out. Do you remember, or did you research that?
Well,
when it came up?
I was around when that came out, and so I didn't actually see it, but I know what happened socially.
And the same
And then
time,
the big thing that happened was that everyone suddenly started keeping fasts for Santoshima, which no one had heard about. There were temples built for her and everything, and so that was truly a cultural thing in the whole thing.
do you know the Nanak Naam Jahaza came out around
Yeah.
the same time?
Yeah,
and
I remember
also
that too.
became
Right,
very
right.
big.
Yes.
That brings me to another question which is kind of related. That you talk about Bollywood, but is it on the surface level or does it work as a metaphor to
In the
something
first
else?
book it does. It's
Okay.
really, even in this one, because I don't want to give too much away, but then there is this Super Devi, but she actually has a real incarnation in the book, which is very Bollywood inspired. Okay, one last question, because I think we are told to stop at 6:15. So.
Well, I remember when I was 30 and I just went to Bombay for the first time and I just loved wandering through Bombay and going from these neighborhoods that shift so quickly. And I'm wondering, did you do research then in Bombay, shifting
That's a
through
good
neighborhoods?
question. Okay, so the first thing that I should have pointed out, when you saw that map of Bombay, people who haven't been there, it's a very vertical city. It was like 7 islands and that was, all reclaimed. So that's perfect for this book because that gives you a direction to make this journey. And so what I did was, I did walk that whole distance, pretty much, that Sarita does. And it was great seeing, I was looking for targets to basically blow up. So it was great fun. So. Okay, so let's stop there.
I think we're going to wrap up, and thank you again, Manil.
Thank you.
It's outside. Manil Suri will be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, and I'm tomorrow what I'm doing is I'm actually going more into math a little bit and using it to explain my trilogy. So it's a very, but you don't need to know any math, so don't be scared.
Let me just give you a couple of things. So one is that his talk tomorrow is at SSB, so just so you know, it's a little further than I thought it was, but it's over on, if you take Harrison West to Racine, it's still walkable, but just may take 15 minutes instead of 5 minutes. So just, sort of plan for that tomorrow. We have about 15 minutes now where we'll be up here autographing books, so maybe let him make his way out to the books, and then you can